So fear is a very interesting thing, right? Because it's an emotional reaction and it kind of overwhelms all other senses. So with that in mind, when we are working on building confidence and alleviating fear, we can't start with the reaction. We have to take a step back and start before that happens. It would be like if you were on a hike with a friend and you guys came across a rattlesnake and you were really close, like 5 feet. That is a scary, dangerous scenario. And if your friend suddenly started saying, "Hey, pay attention to me, I have a story to tell you," you'd probably be like, "You're kind of an idiot. There is a danger right there." And as much as your dog's reactions might not be to something that is actually dangerous, it is definitely how your dog is perceiving it. They feel that it is dangerous. But if you and your friend saw that rattlesnake maybe 30 or 50 feet away, you'd still want to keep an eye on it, but you'd probably be a little bit more inclined to pay attention to your friend if they asked you to. So the very first thing that I would do is I would practice away from any of the triggers. And I don't actually know what your dog is reactive to, so I don't know what their trigger is. But I would start away from the trigger. So at home, in a quiet room, if you have a yard, wherever it might be, and teach them to focus on you there, away from any of the distractions or triggers. My personal preference is to teach attention or eye contact as a default behavior. So I don't cue it. I have it as the default. And what I mean by default is it's like the dog's default setting. So this means that anytime you are out with your dog on a leash, they should intermittently offer you attention or eye contact. And it's called a check-in. And it's an automatic thing that they do. And I love to teach it this way because I don't want to have to constantly be telling my dog, "Hey, pay attention to me," because we're out somewhere. I want them to be thinking about doing it on their own, because that means they're paying attention to me and I'm not following my dog around making sure that they're doing what I want. It also ends up becoming the automatic behavior that they do when they have questions in the environment. Meaning if they come across something that they're uncomfortable about or nervous about, they have this big learning history of looking at their person. And so that's kind of the first thing that they end up doing when they're not sure about what's happening in the world. And that's a lovely thing to have. First, because a dog that's looking at you is not reacting to triggers, but also because it is building trust in those experiences because your dog is looking to you for guidance. So back to the setup for teaching this: quiet environment, lots of yummy treats. I actually like to kind of wait and see if my dog will offer me eye contact. And I like to start this way because it gives me a really good idea of kind of where my dog is with their relationship with me. If my dog takes a really long time to look at me in a quiet, no distraction environment, we have some relationship building to do. And the other reason that I really like it is because I'm going to wait for that eye contact and then I'm going to deliver a treat. But it also gets my dog to think about doing the behavior to get the treat, not just figuring out where the treat is, right? Because that's not what I want. So the like showing a treat and bringing it up here, it's not my favorite thing. I want my dog to think about the fact that they have to look up here because this is where the cues come from, right? I want my dog to look up here and then get a treat. And it really helps to define that the system of training that we are using is do a behavior, get a reward, not go and search for the reward, right? Because that's not useful. Once I can get solid, consistent check-ins and eye contact in a low, no distraction environment, then I start to take my dog to low distraction environments and practice more. And I just practice that default check-in for a while because I don't need to be asking them a whole bunch of other things, especially if they're already dealing with fear reactivity, right? I want to build trust. I want to build a good learning history. So I spend some time just going to low distraction places where there probably aren't going to be any triggers and rewarding my dog for paying attention to me. And it might sound really simple, but I'm going to tell you, this is the one thing that I would encourage every dog owner to do. Because when this behavior is solid, you are going to be able to prevent a lot of the behaviors that you don't want, right? A dog that's paying attention to you isn't reacting to a trigger. They aren't barking or jumping on people that are walking by. They're not pulling because they're checking in with you and paying attention. And then the next step would be to gradually introduce those triggers. And that can be kind of hard depending on what the trigger is. So sometimes setting up scenarios where you have a friend who, if your dog is reacting to humans, your friend just hangs out at a big distance, right? Remember the rattlesnake, and you work on getting that default focus, right? And then you would practice on getting closer and closer to the trigger. But you don't want to be on top of it because that isn't useful for anyone. What happens is we gradually change the dog's feelings about the trigger, because now when we are in the face of the trigger, not only do we get good treats when we pay attention, but we're also learning to trust the person holding the leash that they won't let anything bad happen to the dog. And that's a really, really crucial piece of dealing with fear reactivity. I really want to build up my trust with my dog so that they know I'm going to take care of them. I won't let anything happen to them. And that honestly is probably 80% of the battle, because when they're reactive like this, it's usually because they feel like they need to handle that situation. Totally makes sense. But I want my dog to look to me to handle the situation. And that requires building a level of trust where they know that I won't let anything happen to them. Now, depending on whether you have a yard or if you need to take your dog out in public to potty and their triggers are there, these things are going to influence what we can do with the training, right? Because if you have to take your dog outside to potty and they react to humans and you're guaranteed you're going to see humans, then it makes it really difficult to get a whole lot of progress. And this is actually physiological. When a dog has a reaction, it dumps a bunch of chemicals into their body, right? Adrenaline, there's all of these things that happen. And it takes 48 to 72 hours for those chemicals to come out of their body, to actually process all the way through. So if your dog has not gone 72 hours without a reaction, they're actually constantly at a heightened state and more likely to react. So if possible, I actually really like to start with a 72-hour cortisol vacation. And what that means is for 72 hours, I avoid all triggers. Depending on the situation, that might mean walking your dog at times when there's not going to be a whole lot of other people out, or even taking them to a different place to walk them for their potty breaks or just their exercise. And of course, there is a lot to this. So, feel free to comment here and ask some more questions, but I'm also going to invite you to check out a wellness workshop presentation that I did a couple of years ago, and it's free on YouTube. So it's through Annenberg Pet Space, and it is called How to Help Your Leash Reactive Dog. It's about an hour long, includes videos, and gives you a little bit of an idea of how you can help your dog work through this.